Hey Untold Radio Network fans, want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Greetings, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird for the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and it's a chilly night here in the Northwoods, as I am sure it is across a lot of the United States and Canada. So thank you for joining me. It'd be a nice night to kind of, batten down the hatches and snuggle in and listen to some fascinating ghost hunting tales. Speaking of snow and the conditions in the Northwoods, one of the things I always like to do at this time of the year, because there's obviously snow on the ground, is it's very easy to wander around the cabin and find animal prints everywhere, because we have all kinds of things here in the Northwoods. And something my daughter loves particularly, and some things by now she recognizes instantly, like she'll know a rabbit track when she sees it, and she'll know deer tracks obviously when she sees them, and bird tracks and the obviously little mice tracks she can always identify. But so today we were wandering around and we saw something we thought might have been a skunk. She actually had a little track guide kind of book with her. But there was one thing which was weird. And I mean, maybe somebody who's a better tracker than me, because Lord knows I'm new to this part of the world, so I have no real idea what tracks really look like other than the pictures or the silhouettes of tracks in my daughter's book. But there was something that was a little weird looking, like 3-toed print. And it wasn't very long. It wasn't like, big. It was probably only, I don't know, each little toe would have stuck out an inch or so, and the back of the foot would have been about the same size. And my daughter was actually, that's a 3-toed. I'd seen it, didn't really say anything, and she was like, "That's a 3-toed print. What's that?" And I jokingly said, "Well, the beast of or the Boggy Creek monster, the Falk monster, was sometimes said, had 3 toes." I think, and she knew straight away. She said, "This is a little print. This isn't the Falk monster." And then she said, "What could it be?" And the other thing I thought of was, well, goblins, because of course in Hellier, there's a tale of creatures with 3 toed prints. And I think throughout the broader, weirder, supernatural and cryptozoological world, sometimes these strange 3-toed prints show up. So maybe somebody can explain what it was in the comments tonight, which would be great, because I'd be very curious. Although, to be honest, it's kind of cool to think that there are goblins running around the perimeter of my woods at night. So, but yeah, let me know if you know what that print might have been. Anyway, I'm delighted to have tonight's guest. He's a good friend of mine, and he's no stranger to the world of ghoulies and ghosties and things that go bump in the night. Growing up in the 1950s and 60s, he was fascinated by the supernatural and paranormal, and he soon became a performing magician and hypnotist, hypnotizing his first subject at the age of 12. Although his early goal was to become a professional magician, just like his hero Houdini, during high school he received a higher calling and eventually became an ordained priest in the Episcopal Church. He has a bachelor's degree in philosophy and a master's degree in theology, specializing in psychology of religion. He also is a graduate of the Silva Method of psychic development. In the 1970s, he lectured extensively on the church and the occult in response to the occult explosion, which was an interest in all things supernatural and paranormal. And during this time, he became co-founder and co-director of the Foundation for Christian Psychic Research, an educational organization designed to bring a Christian interpretation to the study of parapsychology and the paranormal. It was during this time that he worked briefly for world-famous ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren, aiding in their investigations and performing exorcisms. He was also nicknamed the psychic priest by a radio talk show host because of his experiments in remote viewing and intuitive diagnosis. And it isn't mentioned here in the bio, but I know he got a lot of coverage in popular magazines at the time, and he was well known as the psychic priest back in the 70s America. And after his retirement from the ministry, he became a certified hypnotherapist, and he's also authored numerous books on various subjects, including Be Still and Know, a practical guide to Christian meditation. And his latest project is sort of autobiography entitled The Confessions of a Psychic Priest, which he hopes to finish by the end of this year. And I've already read the first draft and a couple of the parts of later drafts. It's fantastic. It's so interesting. He's lived just a phenomenal life, a life richer and fuller than most of us could ever imagine. At any rate, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back to Talking Weird one of my favorite guests of all time, and also my very good friend, Edd Schultz.
Good evening.
So good to have you back with us, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here talking weird.
Well, I can't think of anybody I'd prefer to talk weird with. And it's good to have you on at the moment because I know you have this background, obviously, with the Warrens, and they've kind of blown up in paranormal controversy in recent years. We were talking a little bit about it before the show earlier today on the telephone, and we both have different reasons why we think this is perhaps for whatever reason why this controversy has become so hot again. But there seems to be a real division in the paranormal community about I suppose, whether they think Ed and Lorraine Warren were good investigators or whether they were hoaxsters or whether they were deluded or whether they were abusive. There's all these kinds of different stories. So it's fascinating to have you on the show, somebody who actually worked with them, perhaps get some kind of insight, firsthand insight.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoy. Well, I was going to say I enjoyed working with Ed and Lorraine, but I don't even know if enjoyed is really the right word. Maybe the best thing for me to do is kind of give you a chronological view of how I worked with the Warrens and give you some of my impressions of them as paranormal investigators, as people, etc. Because I know
please do.
It seems to me that a lot of the reason that there's controversy about them is the movies have made them sort of superheroes. I mean, they're almost Marvel, paranormal superheroes. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the funny things that I think about these movies, The Conjuring and whatever, is the actors that they get to portray Ed and Lorraine are really good-looking people. But Ed and Lorraine, nice as they were, they weren't exactly. Well, let me put it this way: when I look at them, the first thing that comes into my mind is Gomez and Morticia Addams. Ed was big. He had these deep set dark eyes, kind of raccoony, stuff. And Lorraine was an interesting looking woman. I wouldn't say she was a beautiful woman. I wouldn't say she wasn't attractive. She just had a very unusual look to her. They were both good people, but let's go back
Did Ed dote on Lorraine the way that Gomez dotes on Morticia? Was there anything to the relationship like that?
No, nothing. The relationship, no. It's purely the look. If I were going to cast a movie about the Warrens, I would probably, if Danny DeVito were tall, I would cast him as Ed Warren. I remember there was a made-for-TV movie in which Andy Griffith played Ed Warren. Couldn't be more different people. But anyway, I digress too much. I met the Warrens in the 1970s. I think it was about 1977. I was, as you mentioned in the introduction, working with the Foundation for Christian Psychic Research. And one of my friends said to me one time, have you ever heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren? And I said, no, names don't mean anything to me. And they said, well, they're ghost hunters. I was living in Connecticut at the time, in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And this person said they're ghost hunters, and they go around the country and give these lectures on the paranormal investigations that they do. And they're going to be here in town next week. Would you like to go and see them? So I said, sure. And I went, and it was an interesting and entertaining presentation that they gave. And I began to notice sort of right away that they had a sort of ideology about ghosts and demons and things like that. And that was it. That was kind of the way things are, according to them. Now, I come from a background in philosophy and psychology and theology. I've also been a magician. I've been a hypnotist. So I bring all of those anytime I even read about the paranormal. I bring all of those into the picture and try to dissect whatever the experience is in a number of different ways, looking at it from different points of view. The Warrens had one point of view. There are either ghosts or there aren't ghosts. There are either demons or there aren't demons. That's it. So we saw the presentation, and at the time, for the Foundation for Christian Psychic Research, we were looking for people to be on our advisory board. And I said to my friend, hey, why don't we go backstage and talk to them and see if they'd be interested in being on our advisory board? And of course, at that time, because I didn't know anything about them, really, I didn't know about any kind of controversy. And I don't think in those days that there really was that much controversy about Ed and Lorraine. So we went backstage, introduced ourselves, told them about the foundation, and they said, sure, we would love to be on your advisory board. So we had the editor of our journal interview them. In fact, I have here a copy from, what is it, the winter issue of 1977 of our journal, which was called Soul Searcher. And we interviewed the editor of the magazine, interviewed Ed and Lorraine. Here they are in all their glory.
Huh.
Ed and Lorraine Warren. And we brought them on board. We didn't do too much with them at first, but then one day I got a phone call from Ed, and he said, Father Ed, I'd like you to come over to my house. I have something I have a recording I'd like to play for you, and I think we could use your help. Well, of course, I was a young priest at that time. I was maybe 25 or so, and really interested in the paranormal and any kind of new experience, that I could have. So we went to see the Warrens, had a little tour of the museum, their occult museum, got to meet Annabelle. Didn't touch her. As they warned, but and I saw the door that is marked "Do not enter," and they told me nobody goes behind that door, because if you even open the door, you're going to unleash all kinds of demonic forces on the world.
Wow.
Well, anyway, and that kind of reminds me of this is maybe a little aside, but that door. I'm a great science fiction fan, and one of my favorite science fiction shows is Stargate SG-1, which is about this portal that transports people to other galaxies, and it's housed at what's the name of there's an actual something mountain. I wish I could remember the name of it, but there's an actual Air Force base somewhere in the mountains. I'll remember this at 3
Like
o'clock in the morning.
Mount Weather or Iron Mountain? I'm just trying to think of the different.
No, it'll come to me eventually. But anyway, there is a real Air Force base that's under the ground that they used as their set. And they would use to do establishing shots. They would see trucks going in and out of the entrance to this base. And at the base, as I said, does really exist. And as an homage to the SG-1 people, there is actually a door in this mountain air base that says Stargate Command. It's a broom closet.
That's
but
hilarious.
just as an homage to them. So anyway, Ed and Lorraine's "Do Not Enter Here on Peril of Whatever" kind of reminds me of that. I don't know what was behind the door. I didn't peek. I didn't ask for any details or anything like that. But anyway, so I sat down and Ed played me some tape recordings of different kind of things that go bump in the night and poltergeist activity, and interview that he had with some people. And he said, Father, we need priests like you who would be willing to do an exorcism if necessary. Now, in the Episcopal Church, we do not have official exorcists, unlike the Roman Catholic Church, where you need to be, quote, licensed by the diocesan bishop and trained by the Vatican in order to be an exorcist. We just don't have that in church. The Church of England, which is our mother church, is a little bit different. They do, the Bishop of Exeter back in the 1970s commissioned a study on exorcism and possession and things like that, and did write a report that has a ritual for exorcism in it. Of course, the Brits believe in ghosts and things like that a lot more than Americans do, I think. But anyway, I was familiar with that. And when Ed said, we would like to maybe call on you sometime to do an exorcism. And I said, okay, sure. I'll be glad to do that. Well, within a week or so, I got another call from Ed, and he said, Father, I want to come to your office with a recording that I would play for you. We desperately need your help with this case. And I said, okay, come on. So he played me a recording of a session that he had with a family in New Jersey. It was a young woman, maybe 19, 20 years old or so, whom Ed said to me before he turned the recording on. He said, Father, this young woman is possessed by a demon. And we've tried to I tried to exorcise the demon. It didn't seem to work. Maybe I would like you to help us. So I said, okay, play me the recording. Now, this is a recording that Ed made while he was talking to the young lady. So he's narrating what's going on. And he says, we believe that this young woman is possessed by a demon. And I'm about to do a test of religious resistance. If a person is possessed by a demon, they cannot tolerate any kind of sacred objects. I have a blessed crucifix here, and I'm going to put it on the back of her neck. And if she is indeed possessed by a demon, the demon will reject this violently. Now, imagine he's talking right in front of this young girl, an impressionable 19 or 20-year-old girl who's already scared because she thinks that maybe she's been possessed by a demon. And here is this world-famous demonologist saying, I'm going to do this test of religious resistance. Here we go. I'm putting the crucifix on the back of her neck now. She's yelling and she's screaming her lungs out.
Gosh.
And on the recording, you hear this furniture being pushed over and breaking and whatever. And Ed is, the power of Christ commands you. I command you in the name of Jesus to come out of this girl. And he's playing the part of an exorcist, which,
It's gracious.
they were supposed to be very devout Roman Catholics, which they may have been. But if you're a very devout Roman Catholic, you should know better as a layperson than to try to do an exorcism yourself. That's the only people authorized for that are priests of the church who have been trained. So Ed is trying to do this exorcism with the girl yelling and screaming these prayers and whatever. And things calmed down a little bit. And he said, Father, this was a couple of weeks ago, and we believe that she is still possessed. The exorcism didn't work. Can you help us? And I was thoroughly intrigued. Of course, as I'm listening to this recording, the hair's going up on the back of my neck and things like that. My heart is pounding because of all this yelling and screaming and violent stuff. And I sort of thought to myself, what am I getting myself into here? Maybe I'm biting off more than I can chew. But as I said, I was young, I was ambitious. So, okay, Ed, bring it on. So Ed and Lorraine brought this young girl and her family, her mother and father, from New Jersey to the church that I was working at in Connecticut, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Ridgefield. And beforehand, before they came, I sent the family, I was given the address, and I sent the family a release form that I wanted them to sign that basically said, if anything happens, she's physically harmed or something like that, neither I nor St. Stephen's Church would be held responsible for any of this. A sort of hold harmless agreement. And which they were willing to sign. Now, as a test of religious resistance, before I sent the letter, in the area around where I wanted her to sign the letter, I put some holy water. Now, theoretically, if she's possessed by a demon, she should react when, this is a sacred object. She should react when she's trying to sign it. When they arrived, I asked them for the letter of agreement. They gave it to me, and I said, any problem with signing the agreement? No, everything's fine. Okay, that's good. So she failed religious resistance test number 1 for being demonically possessed. Religious resistance test number 2 from Father Ed. I gave her a handkerchief, a white handkerchief, into which I had put a set of rosary beads that I had acquired from a nun. And I said, I didn't tell them what was in the handkerchief. I just said, Pat was her name. Pat, I'd like you to hold this handkerchief for me. And she did, put it in her hand, no problem whatsoever. Failed test of religious resistance number 2. Then I said, okay, let's go over to the church. We went over to the church. Now, theoretically, if a person is genuinely possessed by a demon, they can't even go near a church. Usually they're not even in control of their body. Just like, remember the movie, The Exorcist. Reagan was in bed all the time. She never went to a church. Anyway, the whole family came into the church, no problem whatsoever. I was ready. My boss, the rector of the church, Dr. Aaron Manderbach, was ready to assist me. We had liturgy from the Book of Common Prayer and from the Bishop of Exeter's things. And she knelt at the altar rail. Her mother and father were on either side of her. The Warrens brought with them 2 hulking bodyguard type people, just in case. So these two big guys are standing behind them. The Warrens are standing behind them. So Dr. Vanderbach and I began the liturgy with the standard prayers for healing and things like that. And then in part of the liturgy from the Bishop of Exeter, the actual exorcism, you're told to command the demon or demons to identify themselves by name. So I think I had my hands on her shoulder or at her head or something like that. And I said, if there are demons present in this woman, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to identify yourselves by name. Crickets. Okay? Now, if there's genuinely a demon present, they would identify themselves. Pat she didn't move a muscle. She was just kneeling there for the whole thing with her hands together and her head down. And we said all the prayers. We commanded any unclean spirits to leave. Again, crickets. These poor bodyguards didn't have a thing to do except stand there and twiddle their thumbs and look mean. So I finished the exorcism. Pat had tears running down her eyes. She had a big smile on her face. And she said, "Oh, thank you, Father. Thank you. Thank you. I feel so much better now." So everything was calm, cool, and collected. And they left. Ed and Lorraine, I don't know whether they rolled their eyes or what, but I don't think they were thrilled with the exorcism because there wasn't very much drama. I mean, it would not make a good movie of the week. The audience would be yawning at what they saw when we did the exorcism. So Pat went home. Everything seemed to be okay. But then a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the family and said, "Father, we really would appreciate it if you could come down here to see Pat again. She still seems to see shadowy figures and sometimes hear voices. She doesn't know what they're saying." But I said I was reluctant to do this, to go all the way to New Jersey. But I figured, okay, I may as well see this thing through. So I went to New Jersey. In the home, I performed a standard house blessing, which we do have at the Episcopal Church, part of which is an exorcism of any evil forces that may be present, that sort of thing. We had Holy Communion. And again, I did some of the rites of exorcism on Pat. Again, no need for bodyguards or anything like that. Everything was calm, cool, and collected. And I had been trained in the very early 70s using the Silva mind control method. I had been trained to use my psychic senses. I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic, but I have psychic abilities that everybody has, but mine, are developed. And I try to kind of sense out whatever I could. I sat on steps to going upstairs at one point before we started all of the rituals, and just kind of tried to psych out the situation. And the conclusion that I came to, right or wrong, I don't know, was that perhaps Pat was a natural medium. And if there are discarnate spirits, perhaps there were discarnate spirits that were coming to her to try to get laid to rest. So I thought to myself, and I didn't pick up any impressions of any kind of demonic forces or anything like that. So I said to Pat, "All right, this is what I think is going on. I think maybe you're a natural medium and these spirits come to you because they want you to help them pass on to the next stage or whatever. So from now on, if you see or hear anything, I want you simply to say to them, 'Into God's hands, I commend your spirit.' That's it." And I said to her, "They'll be gone. They will leave you alone." So, but at the same time, while I was there, now this is kind of an interesting twist to it, I did get a kind of psychic impression of an old sea captain, a mean guy who perhaps had murdered someone, maybe even his wife or his wife and his daughter. Those were just impressions that came to me. Now, at the time, I didn't tell Pat's family about any of those impressions. I kept them to myself. And I left. Well, actually, no, I need to correct myself. I did tell them my impressions. And they said they didn't know anything about that, but they would check with the local library and the historical society. Well, I left. Everything seemed to be hunky-dory. And as far as I know, everything is fine today. I've never heard from them again, except they did call up and they said, we wanted to let you know we did some historical digging, and there was apparently a sea captain, a retired sea captain in that area who had quite a hold on a lot of the residents of that town, and it was suspected that he had killed his wife. So I don't know, but that was my first experience with exorcism and with Ed and Lorraine Warren.
You had a double hitter there, really. You had to deal with the Warrens, and you had to deal with the ghost of a departed sea captain who was perhaps hanging around or not.
That's right. Now, another addendum to this story is, as I was doing some research for the book that I'm working on now, I called up some people in New Jersey in the area. I called up the local library and asked if they had any. I told them part of the story, just the story about the sea captain, not about the girl, and asked them if they could do a little bit of digging and see if they could come up with anything. They didn't, but I Googled the name of the city and sea captain and murdering mother and daughter. Now, there was a man back in the 1990s who was suspected of murdering his wife and his daughter. And I thought to myself, well, if what I picked up initially was true, who knows? Maybe this guy's spirit came back and did the same kind of thing. I don't know.
Goodness. Is that going in the book?
Yes, it is.
Oh, excellent. It's interesting.
Yeah, the whole story.
An interesting story. And after... No, you go.
So that was my first experience working with the Warrens and extending myself beyond working directly with them.
And after that experience, I know you did more with them. Were you cautious afterward? Were you thinking maybe there is a nature or I suppose a predisposition for them to maybe overreact or, jump the shark a little bit when they have these kind of, requests to come and exorcise somebody?
Yes, definitely. Because of this recording that I heard of Ed doing all of this stuff, I got my microphone wire hung up here. Excuse me a second here. Because what I heard on that recording and my own experience with hypnosis and knowing how suggestible people, you get people up on stage and you can make them cluck like a dog and bark like a chicken. So if you get an impressionable young woman and you're making suggestions to her and you're an authority figure, sure, there's going to be a demon or something like that. So I was kind of leery of the Warrens. And when I remembered their presentation, I remember one of the most powerful parts of the presentation, as far as the audience was concerned, was they showed slides of what they referred to as ghostly and demonic faces in rows of houses that they had photographed, because they were famous for drawing pictures and making paintings of haunted houses. And they would show these pictures, these photographs, and say, of course, you can see right here very plainly, there's a demonic face in that window. And even then, I was kind of skeptical. I mean, I had never heard of pareidolia, which is kind of the man in the moon phenomenon. It's when your mind tries to make patterns, recognizable patterns, out of random patterns. Like a smiley face. I mean, a smiley face is two dots here, a dot in the middle, and a curved line here. Well, that's not really a face, but you look at it and you say, face.
Right.
Same thing with the man in the moon. It looks like with certain faces of the moon, it looks like you can see the face of a man. So I thought to myself, well, they may be very well-meaning people, but I think they did go overboard quite a bit. and see things that perhaps were not really there. Now, I'm not saying that they were fakes. I'm not saying that they were deliberately deceiving people. I truly believe that they believed in what they were doing. Lorraine believed that she was a medium and she could speak with departed spirits, and maybe she could. I don't know. But Ed believed that he could recognize demonic spirits. Maybe he could. I don't know. But I was pretty leery of working with them again. But I did on a couple of occasions. I went with them to, quote, haunted houses. And although I didn't pick up any kind of psychic impressions of any kind of ghostly figures or anything like that, Ed and Lorraine certainly did right away. And I think that one of the reasons that I stopped working with the Warrens was because they stopped working with me. They stopped calling me for I think two basic reasons. One was that I wasn't dramatic enough for them when we did the exorcism. I didn't kind of buy into their whole, tooth and nail fight with the devil kind of thing. And also, after one of the hauntings that we investigated together, a local newspaper interviewed me because I had been written up in a number of different newspapers. So they heard about me and they heard about the Warrens in this particular house. And in the interview, they said, do you really think there were ghosts in this house? And I said, well, Lorraine felt that there were. And that was really all we had to go on, was Lorraine's say-so. And that, of course, was printed in the article. I don't know if you know it, but you disappeared, Dean. I can still see myself, but I don't see you. But I'll continue anyway. I said all we have to go on is Lorraine's say-so, and I think that probably the Warrens read that article and weren't too thrilled with me, so they stopped calling me up, and we parted ways. Looks like Dean is coming back.
Yeah, I had some weird hiccup here, so it froze and I had to reboot, but here I am.
Okay.
I knew you'd keep talking. You're a professional. So continue with whatever you were saying.
Okay. Yeah. So that was around the time that Ed and Lorraine and I kind of parted ways. They just stopped calling, and as I reflected on the whole experience, there were a number of things that came to me. First of all, as I said, and I'm trying to remember whether I said this here or just when we were talking previously, Dean, the Warrens were devout Roman Catholics, so they say. And in the Roman Catholic Church, when you are trained as an exorcist and you're called in to possibly do an exorcism, there's a whole long procedure that needs to be gone through before an exorcist is even authorized. And that includes a medical examination of the person, a psychiatric examination, a family history and a background check to see if there's any other thing that could explain the things that are going on. It's only after all of that stuff that you would call in an actual exorcist and possibly perform an exorcism. But Ed and Lorraine, nope, there's a demon here, got to get an exorcism. That's it. They didn't go through any of that procedure. And as I reflect back on my own experience with them, I think now that perhaps I was too hasty in helping them out, that maybe I should have taken a few steps back and said, well, now, wait a minute, Ed, wait a minute, Lorraine, let's take a look at some of the other things that are possibly contributing factors. I mean, maybe this girl, Patty, was not a natural medium. Maybe she wasn't possessed. Maybe she just read something in a book or some friend of hers told her a story. And then, somebody went to see the Warrens and said, oh, Patty, we think that because of what these people said, you might be possessed, and blah, 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 blah. And that, it could have been all caught up in that sort of thing. And that was at a time in the 1970s when the movie The Exorcist had come out, Rosemary's Baby, Damien, The Omen, all of these movies in which the devil is present in a very strong way. And the devil, one of the arguments that I have with movies like that is the devil always wins. The people with the faith don't win. You know, at the end of Rosemary's Baby, you see this demonically faced little baby.
And that's true. Satanists win in
that's
that.
it. And in the end of The Exorcist, the original Exorcist movie, the young priest, you know, says to the demon, okay, you come in me. I don't want you to hurt the old priest. And then the priest throws himself down and commits suicide. I mean, who really won there? Maybe Pazuzu went away, but here's a dead priest. So who wins? You know, who else is going to get possessed by this demon after it goes somewhere else? So I did in one of our journals, I wrote an article that I called The Devil's Due, in which I pointed this out, that all these things, even in The Omen, I mean, how many sequels were there to The Omen? He keeps coming back. The Antichrist keeps coming back. He keeps winning, so to speak. So I kind of thought that there were a lot of people who got caught up in that whole kind of mindset that the devil is powerful, that there are demons all over the place, and they want to possess you. And you know, when I went to see the movie The Exorcist, there were, as I walked into the theater, there were people lying down in the what do you call the entrance, the foyer or whatever, to the theater, the lobby. There were people, mostly men, young men, who were lying down on the floor, getting smelling salts and all this sort of stuff, because the movie was, I mean, it was really intense. It was really scary. There were subliminal tricks that they were doing at the time. I understand that they had recordings of bees buzzing that were subliminally put into the soundtrack, you know, all this kind of stuff to scare the bejeebers out of people. And so people were, you know, and your consciousness of demons and possession was raised at that point. So there were all kinds of people being possessed. Where are they now? Do you hear much about people being possessed? No. Yeah. Are they all gone because Ed and Lorraine took care of them? No. Maybe it was just kind of the zeitgeist, you know, the spirit of the times with all this kind of stuff.
I do think today part of the reason for some components of the paranormal community perhaps disliking the Warrens, I think part of it has to do to a degree with what you're saying, but also because now there are so many people involved in paranormal research, and so many people think it's healthy and it's fun and it's easy to talk to ghosts, and there's not as many demons as, you know, we used to think, and everybody says there's a demon when it's not a demon, it's just a friendly, you know, ghost who hasn't passed on. So I think there's almost been a movement away in the paranormal community from that type of Ed and Lorraine Warren approach. So today, I think a lot of I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the paranormal community. I mean, I'm interested in it. I talk to people in it, but I suspect a lot of the reason that they're disliked today, or some components of the paranormal community dislike them, is because they don't like the fact that maybe what they're doing or the things they're talking to mightn't be good. You know, and I'm always suspicious of any if you talk to anything that you think is, you know, a non-human entity, why is this assumption that because it tells you it's your great departed, you know, great-great-grandmother or the shopkeeper who used to live there, or whatever they hear, why would you believe that? I'm not going to believe a stranger who rings me on the phone and tells me, hey, I'm such and such. If I've never met you, I'm not going to believe you, let alone, some discombobulated voice coming through some, spirit
Right,
box or
right,
something. It's very
right.
strange. So I think there's, I'm not saying Ed and Lorraine were right, but I think there's been a movement away in the paranormal from, oh, it's dangerous, to, oh, anybody can go and talk to these things. It's not dangerous.
Hmm.
Haha, this is fun. So it's almost like it's swung, to me, it seems like it swung too far in the other direction.
I think you're probably right about that. It's, when you get too many experts, then everything gets watered down. And I think that's probably part of what happened. I agree with what you're saying about you need to be cautious. It may be Casper the Friendly Ghost, but then again, theologically speaking, the devil is what? He's not that horned god that everybody thinks of with the red skin and the mustache and the mustache and a beard.
Andy, you
Um,
want to tell something?
he's Satan, Lucifer. He's light and happy, and that's the way he comes in a disguise that people won't recognize.
Yeah,
That's
I think that's
how
probably accurate.
that's how the bad guy. The old business about the pedophile or whatever who drives up in the ice cream truck and says to the kids, "Hey kids, I've got some ice cream. Why don't you come on in the truck and have some more ice cream with me?" Well, that's fun, It's whatever. You don't know what kind of demonic stuff is going on in the back of the ice cream truck, but you're not going to get in there if a truck pulls up and says, "Hey, this is the local Demon Inc. and we'd like you to come into the truck." You're going to be scared. You're going to stay away from that. But if it's
Yeah,
something that's
absolutely.
pleasing, it's not vinegar, it's honey. Then
So
who
what was
knows
some of
what
your
you're thinking.
follow-up experiences with the Warrens like? Because I know you were involved with them after that initial exorcism that we spoke about.
Yes. Well, as I said, I think there were probably 2 or 3 haunted houses that we went into together, and they asked me to do an exorcism of the house. I have to say, in all honesty, that I never experienced with the Warrens anything like what you've seen in any of the movies. There were no people levitating up to the ceiling and no green ooze coming out of the walls or objects flying across the room or anything like that. Um, I never experienced anything of that nature with the Warrens. Now, part of what that says to me is either they're not there or they're just not there when I'm there. I when I approached exorcism, even though I was a neophyte, I approached it as a person of faith. It seemed to me that, at least in the Gospels, Jesus didn't have these knockdown, drag out fights with demons. Usually it was, okay, get out of here, basically. And that was it. So I felt that according to my faith, that should be my approach to exorcism. I'm not going to fight with a demon. If a demon is a quote bully, then that's exactly what they want. They want to fight. But if you don't give them a fight and you say, I have the authority to say to you, get out of here, beat it. You need to do that. So it may be, maybe because of my faith, I was one of those people that I think you mentioned on a couple of other shows about people who don't have these experiences a lot because they just don't believe or because they're so skeptical and that sort of thing. And, so I wonder if maybe that was an element in why all these things that go bump in the night didn't go bump in the night when I was there. Not that I'm some pillar of virtue, but simply that my faith did not allow that kind of thing to happen when I was there. I don't know. That's the problem, Dean. Well, I think with the paranormal and with paranormal investigation, it always comes down to, I don't really know. It's not like regular science. You take an apple, you hold it up here and you drop it and it falls on the ground. Gravity. Okay, we can understand that. But these weird things that, go in and out, and objects flying. We don't know. Objects flying around, the poltergeist experience. Parapsychologists often explain that as being maybe a young child in the house who has some psychic abilities, some psychokinetic abilities that they're not aware of, and they're causing these things to happen. Could be. I don't know. It's a possible explanation. It seems to me a little bit more probable than ghosts who are just trying to have a lot of fun or trying to scare you out of, scare you out of your wits.
Yeah, the paranormal, certainly, it's subjective regardless, and that doesn't mean that there isn't anything there, but because it seems to be so dependent upon our perceptions and personal experiences, it's so hard to kind of, it's like trying to grab an eel in a barrel of jelly, you know what I mean? Like, just to get to the base of it's almost impossible. And so I'm always weary of or leery of being of taking any accounts at face value, not because I don't think the person had an experience. It's just I can't divide. You can't divide that subjective impression of that experience, or what their psychology's brought to the experience, or what their past, might have, led them to believe such an experience is going to entail. So it's so hard. It's so very difficult. So at least you were going to these, locations and to these cases without, perhaps, even though it's interesting because you were a man of the cloth and you were a man of faith, but you didn't seem to be going to them with the level of previous expectations that a lot of people who undergo these type of experiences do.
Yeah. And it's, I think, I just lost my train of thought here.
Good. By the way, while you did you get it back?
Dean.
No, I was just going to say before both Horace Smith and I think also Uncle Bones, I said it was Cheyenne Mountain, which is the base.
Cheyenne Mountain. That's right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Cheyenne Mountain.
I thought I should tell you. Yeah. Speaking though, well, I'll ask you something else, and maybe your subconscious will pull the other thing out.
I got it. I just got it.
Okay. Let's go with
paranormal is very much there are a lot of parallels between the quote paranormal and religious experience. I mean, there have been people throughout the ages who said, I heard God speak to me. I heard the saints speak to me. I saw visions of the Virgin Mary. I see Jesus in my toast. Those are subjective experiences too. Our Lady of Fatima. How many people saw the same thing that the young children saw? You don't really know how much the individual person's belief and faith and experience is brought to that experience. So that's one of the reasons I think why I've been so interested in the paranormal, is because it has such close parallels to religious experience.
Same. I don't think there's any difference between a Bigfoot sighting, a UFO experience, seeing the Blessed Virgin Mary, or, encountering the devil. I think all of these things are somehow innately interconnected, and what the ultimate truth is going to be, who knows? But there's too many similarities. And I mean, it's not, I didn't come up with this theory. There's various academics who've spoken about it, people like Patrick Harper, Jacques Vallée, obviously John Keel, even people like Lauren Coleman and Jerome Clark back in the day, before they both became more flesh and blood and nuts and bolts type guys. So many people have suggested that there seems to be some interconnection between various branches of the paranormal and religious experiences. Like Fatima, I think it was Jacques Vallée who first pointed out that seems to be very similar to a lot of UFO type sightings, the way that this thing panned out. So yeah, I think you're dead on. I don't think the paranormal is different to the supernatural as far as personal experiences. You're right. And we don't know whether the person, what their background is, whether they're Catholic or Protestant or something else, or, Hindu or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, what that brings to it. But I suspect it does bring something to that experience. And it could just be that you've watched read a lot of UFO books and watched a lot of science fiction movies, and that could be what you bring to the experience, who knows?
Yeah.
But that's what I talk about, the subjective part of the experience, where it's so hard to divide, I think, the experiencer from the experience.
Right. Even J.B. Rhine, who is well known, he's the father of modern parapsychology from Duke University. He wrote a paper called The Parapsychology of Religion. he really felt as a parapsychologist that there were parallels between telepathy, clairvoyance, and things like that, and prophecy, and prayer and meditation. And he wanted to see an academic study of the two, parapsychology and religion. And I had a lot of correspondence with him back in the 70s. And we both kind of agonized over the fact that both of these communities didn't really want to have that much to do with each other because they felt threatened by the other one.
I'm not sure if any bridge has ever
Yeah.
been built still. Is there any,
Yeah.
are they any closer today than they were then?
Not really, I don't think. No. You mentioned that there were some people who had some questions that
I think
or
before,
comments.
yeah, I think Horace Smith, who's been a guest on the show and is a regular listener and is also Professor Emeritus of Astronomy and Physics at Michigan State University, after you were talking about the behavior of some exorcists, asked, so there should be a form of the Hippocratic Oath for exorcists. I don't know if that's a joking
Yes.
aside, but do you think there probably should be some kind of
I
something in
I
place there?
I think so. One of the things that I touch on in my book is accountability. I think that in any of these kind of investigations, there should be, it's not easy, but there should be some kind of accountability. I'm sure that probably in the Roman Catholic tradition, they do have some kind of Hippocratic oath, maybe. But when you get out into the broader field of exorcists and whatever, how are you going to control that? I mean, even as a hypnotherapist and a hypnotist, there are some states where you need to be licensed. There are some states where you need to be a mental health practitioner. There are other states where anybody can become a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist and do anything they want. Accountability in some fields. Who is the one agent that's going to say you are a true paranormal investigator and you are not? You are a true exorcist outside of the church and you are not. That's hard to control, for better or worse.
Talking before the show, earlier today on the phone, we brought up a point like this. You mentioned the fact that, and you said it a little bit earlier too, that Ed Warren considered himself and always said he was this expert demonologist. But it's like, what qualifies one, as you were saying, to be a demonologist, or what qualifies one to be a cryptozoologist or a ufologist or a psychic or any of these things, because they are so far in the pseudosciences, I guess. Anybody, and I'm not somebody who loves the scientific method. I mean, Horace Smith, we read a comment of his, knows I'm a Fordian and how critical I am of the sciences. But my point is that I can say I'm a demonologist right now. Doesn't mean I am a demonologist. And certainly how many people in the UFO communities, and what is a demonologist anyway? Is it just somebody who's interested in reading about demons? Then maybe, maybe all these people are demonologists. What about a ufologist? Is it just somebody who's read a couple of UFO books and wants to look at the sky? What's a cryptozoologist? Somebody who thinks Bigfoot's out there, so he goes and bangs a stick and makes whooping calls at 12 at night in his local woods. So my point is, anybody can claim these mantles in this space.
That's right. That's right. Even, I mean, I think again, I'm not sure whether I mentioned this earlier in the podcast or we just talked about it on the phone. The nickname psychic priest that I got, I kind of cringe when I hear that, because I don't consider myself to be a psychic. I was ordained as a priest in the Episcopal Church, so that part of the nickname is okay. But to hear myself being referred to as a psychic priest, kind of, I wonder, do people think that I'm part of some kind of cult or something like that? And there are priests and high priests and whatever in Wicca and witchcraft, and but I mean, I know I was legitimately ordained as a priest in the Episcopal Church. But
it's a catchy title, though, the psychic priest. I can see your objection to it, but I like the title nonetheless.
It is. In fact, I wrote an article for Fate magazine back in the day called "Reflections of a Psychic Priest." So I kind of embraced that nickname because it was, I hate to say it, was marketable.
Are we going to have some of the extracts of that article in the book? I can't remember if I asked you that before. Is it going to be some of that?
It's going to be. It's going to be reprinted. There's an appendix that'll have a number of articles that I've written for various magazines.
And that book's your book, Confessions of a Psychic Priest, is very close to being done now, I think, because I know I've got a full draft,
Yes.
and I think you've added some more to it since then. It's excellent.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty much at the stage now where I'm just kind of fine tuning it and proofreading it and that sort of stuff. And so I'm hoping that by the end of the year, it'll be either submitted to a publisher or already in print.
Well, I mean, I can't wait for it to be out there.
Hopefully.
We'll have you back on as soon as it is out there as well.
Thank you.
People should keep an eye out for it. And I think, and you've got a show, I think you've got some other podcast appearances coming up as well. So people should just keep their eye out for you in the lead up to the publication of the book and after the book.
Right. Yeah. Can I tell them about?
Sure. You can tell them
Is that
anything you want.
legitimate for you? Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I am going to be a guest on Melissa Dawn's, what is it? Ghostly Archives. I think it's called next Tuesday.
Good show.
It's a little bit, I think it's a little earlier than Talking Weird. So those who tune in can see both on the same night, or I'm sure that they have them archived and you can see them again on YouTube.
No, I've been on Melissa's shows before, and she's been on here. You'll have a great time. Melissa's a great host. I'm going to check that out myself. If it clashes, I'll watch it later.
So and you're a great host too, Dean.
Oh, wow.
I have to say that.
You're an easy guest to have on.
Being on this.
Well, you're an easy guest to have because you're filled with interesting tales. So it's easy just to ask you a couple of questions and then just sit back and listen like the rest of the audience. So it was a great joy talking to you tonight, as it always is, Ed. Thank you so much for coming on the show again.
My pleasure. Anytime.
And until I get to chat to you and to everybody else out there, keep it weird. I'm not sure. My outro isn't playing. Here it goes.